Hello, and welcome to the Weekly Scroll Podcast. My name is Ryan, and joining me today are a couple of people. One that's been here before, one is not. That is Zach and Nick of SoulMuppet. How are you guys doing today?
Evening. Doing pretty good, thanks.
Yeah, happy to be here to chat about Doomspiral.
Doomspiral, yeah. Um, for those that might not know, at least Nick, Zach, you've been here. Fuck, I was gonna count. I think it's like 9 times or something like that at this point. Um,
Yeah.
but for those who might not know who you guys are, what Soul Muppet is, all those kind of things. What is a Soul Muppet, and what are you guys to it?
So I'm Zach. I'm the director founder of SoulMuppet. We are a UK-based indie RPG company which makes games like Orbital Blues, Inevitable, Paint the Town Red, Best Left Buried, and Mad as Hell, and now Doomspiral, which is the game that Nick created for us. Tell us a bit about yourself, Nick. I guess you go.
And I'm Nick. Also UK-based RPG writer, a sort of long time collaborator. I suppose that's the best word for. Uh, done a lot of work with Soul Muppet. I've written the monster manual for Best Left Buried. I've written Gangs of Titan City sci-fi crime game. And yeah, now doing Doom Spiral, horrible dark fantasy boss fights and such.
Yeah. So we've talked about all of. Well, I don't have Paint the Town Red in my hands yet, but I've seen it because we saw it together at Gen Con. Don't have Mad as Hell yet. That's still coming. You guys have a lot of stuff kind of in the queue on the way, and Maul was here after Gen Con, but I don't think have we talked since Gen Con, or was like the Mad as Hell stuff prior to Gen Con? It's all a
Mad
blur
as
at
Hell
this point.
stuff was back in sort of May time, launched on
Wow,
International Workers' Day on May 1st. So
gosh,
yeah, we've not been in since
time is
Mad as
just
Hell.
it just rolls on, doesn't it? It's kind of crazy how it all blurs into one. Um, but you have a lot of stuff in the queue. This is what the so this will be the. Is this just the? I guess if it's just Mad as Hell, this is the second Kickstarter of the year then, or is it the third?
Yeah, second Kickstarter of the year. Paint Town Red was this time like October-ish last year.
There we go.
Yeah.
Um, and we've done reviews of Gangs of Titan City. We've talked about it before, but so Doom Spiral. We're gonna get into that soon, but there's kind of like a difference between Doom Spiral and Gangs of Titan City and like Paint the Town Red and Orbital Blues and stuff like that. Um, one of which I think is defined by sad before describing every version of those games because you have sad space cowboys, you have sad vampires. Um, and then I guess Nick, like with Kings of Titan City and with Doomspiral, which we'll get into a little bit soon, like
Mm,
what would you kind of describe more as your kind of like writing style for the stuff that you bring to Soul Muppet?
that's a great question. Um, I I would say something more kind of along the lines of from the stuff that I've done with Soul Muppet at least. It's the stuff I quite like doing is systems driven a lot of the time. So like Gangs of Titan City has a very tight kind of engine for propelling the plot along. And in terms of like giving players lots of tools and things that they can do to influence events, whether sort of in a sort of more zoomed in person to person scope or zoomed out kind of more schemy plotty stuff. And that is also kind of how I got into serious collaboration with Zach because I was the person who understood the best left buried monsters as much, if not perhaps slightly better than Zach at the time. So that's why I was then doing the monster manual, take a bit of the stress off Zach. Uh, and so yeah, so Doom Spiral is kind of in a lot of ways defined by its combat system, I would say. But I also just really like writing sort of horrid, grungy settings with like, sort of a little stuff to find if you're interested in looking for it as well.
Yeah, I'll definitely say that of
For
all the
me,
systems that SoulMuppet has put out, Doomspiral, maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I've read all of them. It feels the crunchiest. I think by a pretty far margin. Would you guys say that that is correct?
I think the only real rival would be gangs.
yeah, Nick's like corpus of work like sits in quite a different place to mine does. I think while like Doom Spiral and Gangs both feel like SoulMuppet games, certainly in terms of like having really strong emotional storytelling, really precise settings and genres, but mainly through like being about escaping people trying to escape from a situation, right? And that being the case of like Best Left Buried and Orbital Blues' economic situations and like stuff about mental health that goes through those games, and also Paint the Town Red, you know, looking at like escaping economic situations as well, like in Mad as Hell and Gangs of Titan City. There's lots of like really common language there, which feeds over into Doom Spiral because ultimately, right, to address the elephant in the room, this is a game that's like looking at uh, cyclical apocalypses, right, and like the world, the age of fire fading, and like this decision point about like what's going to happen next, and that is something that is like fundamentally a Soul Muppet game in that it feels very Dark Soulsy, but also, yeah, Nick writes a hell of a lot more mechanically inclined than I do. I'm very much in any relationship, writing relationship, I'm the vibes guy, right? I'm not the most confident mechanical writer going, and I think that my background like comes from a bit more of like a story game OSR fusion as a writer, whereas I think Doomspire and to a lesser extent Gangs as well do lean a little bit more trad than like some of the other Soul Muppet stuff. So while it's really different to these other games, it's still fundamentally a Soul Muppet game, Doom Spiral, because it's about like, you know, people trying to work out what to do at the end of the world. And this time it's attack and dethrone God, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, emotions. If someone had to say how are Soul Mobile games different than like the other, piles of games I have behind me, I will say that a lot of games have emotions and things in it, but I feel like that's kind of like a core aspect of Soul Muppet stuff is that the the vibes, but specifically like the emotion that's brought to the game being like a core aspect of it, even if it is escaping an apocalypse or being sad gay vampires or being sad space cowboys or any of the things of it, even in Gangs of Titan City. It's never just like a system. It's never just a setting. I feel like there's always an overarching kind of like something pulling at your heartstrings a little bit. Like some emotion is really like driving a core aspect of the game forward. So if I had to describe Soul Muppet, I think that's kind of how I would say different from a lot of these other ones is like as a whole, I think the catalog probably is more emotional in a great way than a lot of other games and systems or publishers put stuff out. Especially because there's kind of like a through line between all of them versus maybe like a publisher that has put out. I mean, I'm like a Free League or Evil Hat or whatever, where it's just kind of like a smattering of stuff. And that, I mean, that's one reason that I love Soul Muppet is that kind of, I don't know, depth to the games. It's always more than just a setting or a system. There's always, I don't know, I think buy-in that really helps it like feel, I guess, a little bit deeper. And that's why you've been on the show like 15 times. And we did Gen Con together. But so Doom Spiral, gonna get into that in just a moment. But Nick, how did you get involved with Soul Muppet in the first place?
Uh, Mostly by chance. I can't remember exactly what year it was. It was like 2017, 18. When was the
I think
18? So
this year Best Left Buried came out was 2018. Yeah, so that's the year it would have been.
yeah,
18.
so uh this was for the Zine Quest Quartet, where Zach had released Best Left Buried, and then sort of just sourced 4 authors to write adventures for it as part of this big 4-part Kickstarter. And I think the first, they put out an open call in their Discord, well, is how I remember it. And I originally pitched it, and then Zach was like, "That's a really cool idea, but I think unfortunately we can't do it this time." And I was like, "Ah, okay." And then a few days later, I think they came crawling back, and I was like, "Actually, there is a space."
Days. It was months. You
Was
howled.
it?
But
I
yeah.
don't remember it being that long. But
And then
either
we
way,
did Darkling Seas of Owlsmere.
we did the Darkling Seas of Owlsmere, as I was, yeah. And so I ended up writing this sort of zine-sized adventure for Best Left Buried alongside some really very talented writers, which was quite surreal. Particularly in hindsight, now that like I'm kind of more familiar with people like ZDXU and Luke Gearing, who are kind of like very well respected writers in the OSR community.
Might have heard of Luke Gearing a place or two across the ttrpg space, you know.
And so that kind of went reasonably well. I think we made a cool adventure, and then I, in my own time, was having a great time writing it. So I started for my own pleasure, just writing a Best Left Buried bestiary, because what else are you going to do at that time? And I think, Zach, then you just happened to offhandedly mention that you were going to do a remaster of the game with kind of a more 3-core book structure, which became Best Left Buried Deeper. And I said, "Oh, well, I have this." And Zach was like, "Let's go." And then I've just kind of pestered them ever since.
It was very refreshing, like, because Nick's monsters in Darkling Seas of Owlsmere, as Nick said, I said at the time, they were better than mine. They were really interesting. Like, it was really nice, like, writing a framework and then, like, watching somebody else sing with it. And that be something really fantastic. And then, like, I realized I needed that monster manual, but I didn't really have enough ideas or enough time to write an entire one myself. I kind of liked my It's the buried monsters being really simple. And then Nick was like, here's some stuff you could do with this engine to kind of make it more exciting. And that's where that like Hunter's Guide came from, with lots of like now really central iconic monsters that are like quite key to the Best Left Buried setting, I think, you know. So it's super great to collaborate on, and we've made a few more games since then. And Nick's been like also a mainstay at SoulMuppet convention staff in the UK, and is like really familiar with all of our games, and it just makes sense to keep making stuff, really. And me and Nick both really, really love Elden Ring and Dark Souls. Indeed, like, you know, I don't know if
No
this
need
is
to bury
obvious
the
from the
lead there.
crowdfunding project, but me and Nick played through the entirety of Elden Ring 2-player with each other, which is something like all, not just the boss fights, like all the big legacy dungeons as well, which is not something the game really helps you or lets you do. So, you know, we've done a lot of dodge rolling in the same space, with Nick being much better at that than me as well. So, you know, comforting.
Yeah, I saw the Blue Sky posts talking about actually going through Elden Ring and doing it all over again and everything. I actually have still never played 1 second of Elden Ring. I own it. You know, I pre-ordered it. I got it. But I just, you know, every time I try to sit down and watch video games, my brain just goes, "Man, you could be doing something else right now," and then I just can't. I can't get into it. Um, but I've watched a lot of Twitch. I think I've watched all of Elden Ring at this point. At some point, I'll have to actually sit down and play it. Um, but so Doomspiral, you know, we'll get to the meat of the episode. Clearly, if we're talking about Elden Ring and Dark Souls and everything like that, maybe that might be involved. You know, a little bit of inspired by this project. So, I guess to get started with it, where did Doomspiral come from? Like, what was the impetus for this project? How long has it been cooking?
Well, partly for me. Um, I say partly, mostly. Uh, Dark Souls and that sort of series of games has been one of my primary loves and joys for a long time. One of the kind of the big influences on my writing and design even. Uh, and it was getting to the point where, like, we had Dark Souls 3 and then Elden Ring and Bloodborne and all this, and there hadn't been a good Dark Souls RPG. There've been like a few good, like, kind of solo games inspired by that series, like Rune by Spencer Campbell. I quite enjoy. But in terms of like a big meaty thing, there hadn't been anything. And then Steam Forged released their 5e version of the game to mixed reviews, perhaps.
That's kind of you to say.
I can't wear my heart on my sleeve too much about that, given what I'm doing now, I think. But I think that was kind of the impetus for me to like seriously sit down. Okay, well, how would I do that? And this was many moons ago. I think this was even while I was doing Gangs of Titan City. And it was just kind of like in a pot by itself, bubbling along. Uh, and like I talked to Zach reasonably often, I would say, and we talked about it here and there. I don't remember exactly when we sort of first sat down officially to say, "Shall we make this a project?" Zach, do you recall?
And I know we signed the contract in April of last year because I was looking at it mentally.
Yeah,
But in terms of like how long you'd been thinking about it and when we agreed to do it, it was a very long time ago, and it wasn't called Doom Spiral for all of that time.
yeah. The
This
name
this
itself,
has been something
yeah,
that has been like cooking with you for some time, mainly while trying to like work out how the hell to do it because
yes,
it was about like quite fundamentally understanding the things that we loved about that genre and that other people
mm,
love, right? And what bits of that we wanted to try and replicate in tabletop form, and what bits of it could like
yeah,
not be done in transferred away from video games, right? And understanding
yeah,
like there's a document I think we made quite early on, which is like these are the key joys that we wish to translate.
mm,
You know, those sort of
yeah,
alchemical materials, and then Nick since like designed this fantastic system, which and a big setting as well. It's worth mentioning like most of this book is just a massive adventure, like the biggest adventure SoulMuppet has ever written. Maybe Inevitable is slightly bigger, but not in any way that matters.
Inevitable's a big
Big.
book. I was
It's gonna be a
shocked
big
when I
book.
got all three of those books at how big it is, and I literally had to move my shelf to a bigger shelf because Inevitable was too tall to fit with the rest of it. Um,
Yeah,
well,
Inevitable is one of the bigger books on my shelf as well.
yeah,
Absolutely.
good. It feels good. Um, quick question. So, I mean, we'll get into the mechanics a little bit more.
Mm.
So when you guys were making this, were you trying more to if we call it like genre emulation, were you trying to emulate more of kind of like the system or more of the vibes of the system, if that makes sense? Like not necessarily like
Yeah.
how a parry works, but just how the parry makes you feel, kind of thing, or was it a little bit of a mix of both?
I I think it definitely started off for me with kind of emulating or adapting the system. Because if only because like in terms of like the vibes and the aesthetics, I knew I could do that. I understand the aesthetic and what I enjoy about it at least. So I was confident I could do that, but it's the system itself and like the mechanical feel of the game that was the bigger obstacle for the longest time. Because like there's kind of the two approaches I think you can take for this, where you kind of really try and copy the system in like a high fidelity, and especially with something like Dark Souls, which is very, you know, reaction based. That's a hard feeling to make in a spoken word dice rolling game. So certainly there was an attempt at doing that, which I think the current game does about as well as I think you can. Um, and yeah, and kind of it was then once I had the bones of the thing that we started putting on the meat of like building up this setting, this world to explore using the system, and sort of it all fed into back into each other.
Gotcha. Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, you can only do like like Zach said that there's you can do a lot of what video games can do, but you can't do everything. I mean, that's why both
Yeah,
exist in separate spaces. So, you know, being able to try to emulate the parts you want the most is, you know, a great way to start it. I mean, we've talked about how it's, you know, it's Soulsy, right? But what's the actual Doom Spiral pitch? Like, what if this is, you know, inspired by those games you guys love? Like, what is this game actually? What is Doom Spiral itself?
right. This is we've not we've struggled to put this succinctly before, but in essence, the game is about this world that has been doomed by like the decisions of the people who rule it. And like fate has been set, everything's gonna just fade away and die and be just generally quite horrid. So you then play characters called Forsaken, who are deathless beings who are importantly severed from like the progression of fate and destiny. So uh in being nothing to the system, you're kind of free to do anything. So then you engage in this Soulsian journey to explore this kind of magnificent but fallen world and overcome the dangers there, and drag God from his bloody throne to then actually secure a new future for this world. Actually, I
Yeah,
feel
a
like
little
that
bit.
was reasonably
Something like
succinct.
Yeah, just something like that, you know, just
yeah,
cut out from death so you can go kill God. I mean, who doesn't want that? You know, kind of just like real life. Um, there's a quick start you guys have out now, a quick an 80 oh an almost 90 page quick start, which is wonderful that I've been going through over the past couple of
It keeps
days. It
happening to
looks
me.
beautiful. Yeah. I actually have a physical version of it that I got at Gen Con, and in the process of finally putting all my books on the shelves, I think it got tucked into a pile that ended up in a box. So I need to find that and pull that out again. Um, but uh, but it's gorgeous. I mean, you guys have put in more work into this than a lot of people put into like the actual games, and this is 88 page, like A5 ish, uh, softback book. Um, when you said it's the longest adventure that is going to end up in a book, what is this book going to actually look like compared to the rest of the stuff on the SoulMuppet shelf? Like, you know, Best of Fairy Deeper or Inevitable? Is it like a happy
yeah,
medium? Is it going to be bigger and better? Like, what's the
yeah.
plan for that?
So the book itself is quite large. Uh, we kind of understood that to get the required like mystery and labyrinthine scale and also reasonably complicated combat, what we wanted to do was like present something that felt like the complete package for the game.
Mm.
We looked at like splitting up the core book and the adventure into two like Orbital Blues size books. But what we ended up settling on is like something that's going to feel more like a the Inevitable book, if you've got one of those, more like a sort of traditional hardcover RPG. It's going to be A4, so US letter, slightly smudged. and then probably about 240 to 270 pages is what we're projecting. So a meaty book with a lot of like gorgeous detail to it. We've also ended up going quite silly with the cover with the assistance of our lovely printers. At the
No.
moment, the plan is that it is so it's bound in a faux leatherette bronzed leather, which is like this kind of sparkling, not quite leather, um, you know, vegan plant based material that kind of glitters in the light. But the advantage of the particular uh, type of leatherette we've chosen is that when you deboss it, you can also heat treat it. So when we stamp the words Doomspiral into it, it changes it from like a kind of glossy bronze to a sort of tarnished, burnished metal. And then on top of that, we're also applying foils to get this element because, like, our version of souls or blood echoes or runes is this thing called thread, which is meant to be like destiny specifically woven from the great loom of fate by the gods themselves at the sort of end of the world where they've like built their godly kingdom, and that like is something that is going to be physically represented in both like the metallic sheen of this book and also the specific metallic detailing that is going to be around, like, because and then the bonfire equivalent, or your sculptor's idols or site of grace or whatever, is this thing called a tether. So the book is gonna, and the logo of the game itself like incorporates a bunch of these kind of spindly details that then allow fate to be tethered to them, of which you are unwound from and also collecting it. So like it's a real, my me and Eric, who's SoulMuppet's like operations manager, real sort of purchasing Gesamtkunstwerk, where like it is really just a thing from one end to the other that like represents the thing it's trying to be. We also have dice, which I don't know how well this will show up, but they also have the physical golden tether inside of them. Obviously, if you're a podcast listener, this is useless, but if you go to the Doomspiral webpage, you will now be able to see like some of the most absurd dice that our artisan dice maker has ever made, which have bits of thread and these like golden, bonfire equivalents, like set inside them. Um, and yeah, just generally terrifying myself with the extent I'm willing to go to make a RPG, which I personally find interesting and sickos are willing to spend money on.
Yeah, I mean that's how you describe it on the Kickstarter page, is aspirational dream of any book sicko.
Yeah.
And I agree. I mean, I'm very excited. It sounds crazy, and I know that you get real excited about this stuff. I mean, when we did the Mad as Hell, and you talked about how many punches are in that book, like how many holes are in the cover, and all of the various covers, and how you can wrap it, and it's just these layers and layers, which is sick because books are sick. And only like 16% of like the adult U.S. population like reads a book a year. So like, books are cool, and people need to make more cool books. So I'm glad that you're really just diving headfirst, and I'll have some really cool books on the shelf. Before we get into more of the rewards and stuff, though, or like what people are going to get when they go back the system for Doom Spiral, we've already said it's Soulsy, right? And it's beefier than a lot of the stuff. I know that Zach, you said it leans a little bit more trad, which of all the Soul Muppet games that I've read, which is all of them, it definitely does feel the most trad, especially because there are like attribute scores that go up to like 18ish or something like that. There's dice associated with it. It's more of a dice pool game. So I guess system wise, how does it work in as much as you want to say, but like also how do you make it feel soulsy? How do you make it feel like you're wearing a bucket and rolling away from like a giant creature with lore you'll never understand, you know.
Absolutely. So I guess like the main thing that I was trying to emulate with this system, the kind of the two competing push and pulls of games of this style, of the kind of the back and forth combat between you and your enemy, and then also kind of very light resource management. So the way the combat works is you have a pool of dice that represent your stamina, and you get a certain number of those back every round. And each combat round, you can spend as many of them as you like doing things, as long as you have the dice kind of available. So you can spend them on doing things like attacking or casting spells, all that good stuff. But then uh obviously your enemies get to have a go if you haven't killed them all, and they're going to unleash all sorts of horrid hell on you. And so it's the push and pull of, we need to deal as much damage to these guys, but if we don't kill them, we need to have resources spare to then be able to defend ourselves. And everything is like I say, these d6. So they are very kind of, knowable numbers, but nothing is ever going to be a given. Everything you kind of do have to roll the bones for, and it's like sort of almost loose gambling, and just very, the aim is at least for very comprehensible odds, and kind of having to go by your gut rather than calculating. Um, so we want this combat to like kind of have a conceivable amount of depth without having to, do lots of big calculations or like really in-depth tactics. So like there's also kind of a abstracted like position is the name of the system. So you don't have to have like a grid with miniatures moving around. You just have a number that kind of represents how much control you have over the battlefield. So it's very much, I guess you'd call it kind of theater of the mind esque, but with kind of some depth and like calculation to it without it getting too overwhelming, is the intention at least. So you have this kind of, the combat is kind of the core mechanics of the game, but then there's also going to be a lot of focus on exploration, but that is very much sort of looser, more free form to encourage, rather than in combat engaging with mechanics and numbers and abilities. Exploration is stripped right down almost to encourage you to take in the world, explore it, and ask questions about it.
Yeah, I can
Nailing the
imagine.
feel of like a monster and a boss is like really important as well. One of the ways that the game works at a quite fundamental level is that each monster that you fight has its own custom move table, right? With the 6 or so things it is capable of doing, which might be some kind of reaction, some kind of attack, some kind of like stance or movement and way it changes. And each turn, that monster is rolling a number of dice, kind of similar to you, and then performing the actions on the dice that it rolls. If it's got 3 move dice, you're going to be picking 3 things from that move table. And the idea is that as the players fight the creature and maybe fight it repeatedly, if they die and have to come back, or, encounter it in a new position, they're learning the stuff that's on that move table and learning how to interact with it. And the stuff in the quick start is really simple. It's like, and then the monster on a 4 will do an attack, or monster on a 6 will try to grab you and stop you from moving. And as like the game gets more complicated and the monster, well, not the game gets more complicated, the monsters become more powerful, they start to do more utterly unhinged shit that then your characters have to like learn to interact with. And it becomes a bit of a puzzle game as you are like, because your characters, for all this exploration you're doing are going to be accumulating all these abilities, right? And these abilities all use different resources. They use the position, they use the stamina. Some enemies are going to be better at dealing with certain types of equipment or certain types of attacks. You know, they might have attacks that are more easily parryable, or like focus on dealing with ranged attackers rather than melee ones. Like all monsters will target characters at different sets of positions. So you can like learn, oh, because this big monster is about to do a smash attack between positions 4 and 5, I have to be in positions 1, 2, 3, or 5 through 10, right? And as you kind of unlock that, you understand the dance of what your character is capable to do, because the numbers are actually really transparent for what you can expect to achieve. But also, so are the monsters once you learn what they are. So it becomes this sort of really intricate dance of like, in the moment, understanding that there are like things you can do as you learn what the monster is doing. And by accessing like the incredible amount of build variety that the game allows by using all the different weapons and equipment and spells and stuff like that that you've got access to, there's actually like a super in-depth combat system, which is just completely unlike anything SoulMuppet has ever attempted to write. Best Left Buried, like, maybe tries to start doing some of that, but like these monsters are like incredibly intricate and difficult. And once you get to the final like boss fights, like the 6 big gods that you're trying to kill or their various powerful servants, like each of them starts breaking the rules and messing with the mechanics in new ways, you know. And there are like 100 something monsters in this campaign that we're working on right now. And that adventure that we've put in the quick start, the sort of 90-page one, is like maybe 3 or 4 thousand words of the 50,000 word adventure. It is like an absolutely tiny equivalent. It is the equivalent within Dark Souls of like maybe getting as far as Undead Burg or something, like the very first area. And what you get in terms of options outside that is just going to be staggering. And I'm going to be so excited to like see people play and interact with it, because it's really just got some incredibly cool stuff in terms of like vibes and the lore, right, and the secrets that people are going to be able to learn and interact with, but also some utterly epic, mind-bending boss fights that I'm so excited for other people to experience the same way that we have while writing and playtesting it. So yeah, it's just going to be epic, really. Like, I'm so excited.
Yeah, I mean, it like we've all said at this point, it's a crunchier game than Soul Muppet's ever put out, but it still feels Soul Muppet. Like, it's got D6s, which I'm pretty sure just about every game y'all put out is D6 based.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
I like the dice that people have in their house for playing Monopoly with.
it's my favorite
You know,
dice. D6s are the best in my opinion. But one of the things I asked a while ago that is just kind of coming up again is emulating system versus emulating the vibes of the system. And position, when I read that in the quick start, was one of those things where I was like, yes, like this is how this works in my head, right? Where it's like, if you actually had minis on a board playing this game, I think it would give it such a completely different feel, and needing to worry about my guy is 5 blocks away instead of 3 blocks away and stuff like that. Because in Dark Souls, I've played Dark Souls, and one of the things I learned, and maybe it's wrong because I definitely haven't played as much as you guys, but a lot of times, like, you want to be close to the guy, until you don't want to be close to the guy. But realistically, like, the distance between I want to be close and I need to be very far away doesn't often matter, except in those times. So playing the position, when I read that, I was like, this makes sense to me, where I can just know, like, I am not necessarily, the position doesn't matter necessarily my physical position, but more of like the vibe of where I'm at in the battle being the important part of it. And having like the vibes of the mechanics, I think, is such a smart way to emulate video games when it's impossible to emulate video games onto the table because of the way that like electronic works, and the kind of the limit that video games puts on the limitless world that ttrpgs has. So being able to be like, this feels like that without being that, feels really fucking cool. And that's one thing I noticed throughout the entire system was what to me looked like how not do I do what they're doing, but how do I do something that feels like what they're doing, which just feels really, really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Like trying to nail, like you say, it's just the way it feels rather than the actual thing itself. Because yeah, like you say, if you were to do it with minis on the board, it's just going to end with like I shuffle my guy half a centimeter this end, and this guy's going to turn 30 degrees. It's just you get bogged down doing the wrong thing where you just want to be able to like kind of get to the electric bit and find the excitement rather than having to add up lots of integers or do little minute movements. And that's definitely part of the design goals that we had.
Yeah. It's interesting how, especially for the 5e pilled out there, like how important minis and battle maps and everything are when, at least from I wasn't alive playing the games in 1978 or whatever, but I'm pretty sure they just did theater of the mind for a really long time, and that was kind of the focus of the way the rules worked, and you just kind of like had an understanding of it. So being able to kind of step back from that, like if I want to play a skirmish game, I'll play a skirmish game, and I feel like if you did put minis in this, that's what you would end up with here. Is you would end up with feeling like a skirmish game, and then having to worry about like activating your guy or having a whole thing, which would also be fun if it was its own thing. But keeping it, kind of the trad mixed with story bits, which again also feels like a Soul Muppet thing. I think continues to make this feel like a Soul Muppet thing, which is really neat. So going back to all the cool bits, over on the Kickstarter page, we've already talked about the insane book and how cool that's going to look. But you guys funded day 1 or 2 with
The
the
day one.
project? Yeah, day
It was
one.
about 4 hours or something. Yeah, I
Which,
like
congratulations.
very happy
Yeah.
to have got that success early on.
Yeah, I think according to the American numbers, you've double funded at this point. You've now reached the goal twice. That's 40,000 UK or 40,000 American and 30,000 UK, I guess, in pounds. Uh, but when people back this project, what we've talked about the dice a little bit. We talked about the crazy book. What all can people get? What all can people expect from Doomspiral?
Yeah. So as well as all the sort of traditional pledges, where you've got like the initial physical and then the PDF pledges as well. There's free PDFs of all the physical purchases that we do, just because that's how SoulMuppet does things. We've acknowledged that like the characters are slightly more complicated in this game than they would be in like something like Orbital Blues. So there's going to be a proper explicit character sheet where designing. I've done like a preview version that works for the quick start, but it's going to be like expanded out to be slightly longer with lots of rooms for likability and note taking and stuff like that. And what then follows up from that is also we've had a gorgeous cloth map designed by Fernando Salvatierra, who's like working on that at the moment. You could see some of the early sketches for that and the line, well, not sketches, the line work actually for a bunch of those sections on the. We got those final sketches through today actually, which Nick needs to review after this call. And those are the main thing as well. And as well as the dice, we also had a selection of really beautiful handmade batik cloth banners that our artist Dwin did. We've not really talked about Dwin yet, but they're just
a crime on our part, really. Certainly the other
so
big
good.
pillar of this game.
Has been the art for it as well. And yeah, but those banners went pretty much immediately. Well, I didn't charge enough money for them. I'm happy to put that on my to wear that on my hat now. But yeah, so yeah, but the art for the game's been like a really big standpoint. As we met Dwin at UK Games Expo about a year ago, where they were running, like they're obviously a very talented, traditional and digital artist, and was running an art stand at Games Expo, which was mostly selling Dark Souls fan art and lots of other really cool stuff as well. But the stuff that jumped out to me and Nick immediately was like Dark Souls fan art. We were like, oh, this is the artist we want for the project. And once we said to Dwayne, hey, we want to make a Dark Souls like RPG with and you to do all the drawing for it, it was the fastest I've ever seen someone sign a contract. It was like we were talking for like maybe 2 days before they agreed to do like 80 pieces of art for us. So it was a stunning display, and like their stuff has just been like, I think in the same way that like Nick and I really really love these games and like understand a lot of like what the vibes are. We've just started like speaking in tongues to each other. Like the art direction for this game has been super weird. Like there's been a lot of stuff that wouldn't make sense to you if you're a normal person. Just like, oh yeah, like this, like this bit. It's like that bit plus this, and then mixed in with that, and then add some Norse rune carvings and a particle accelerator. Like it just works, and it's been such a fun person to collaborate with as well because they're just so excited about the stuff we're making. It's great. It's been really fun to work with. One of my favorite artist relationship I've had certainly in the last years.
Yeah, the art is insane. So it's one artist for everything all the way through the book then?
Other than this map that we mentioned, yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Apart from the map, which is like a little bit outside their skill set. One artist all the way through for the whole book, which is like how we like to do things as SoulMuppet generally. You know,
the coherence and coherency is really great, and the pieces that are on the Kickstarter page are fantastic. The pieces I got in like the art folder from Mall are absolutely stunning. So yeah, good call on that one. I think you definitely hit the vibes on this one, which you also did great with Inevitable too. I think you just have a good eye for being artist for the vibes of your games. Which don't even start on the Orbital Blues, which have some of those vibes for games of anything on the shelf back there. But so that's kind of the book is really the core of it. You guys are doing dice and the banners were a thing, but you're not doing a million bells and whistles with this project, right? The focus is kind of more on this like big gorgeous book and really packing it, right?
The book and the world itself were ambitious enough for us as is. We might do a couple of small zines if we hit some really high stretch goals. Like we've had a lot of people asking for solo rules, so we might try put that together. But like I doubt things will be that complicated. We just want to get this main book out the door because it's a big book and it's taken a lot of Nick and I's attention over the last year and a half to get it finished.
Yeah, like because we just want it. I think we mentioned that we want it to be like just the complete package. Because if you're going to get a big book like that, you don't want to have to do a whole heap of other stuff kind of on top of it. So we want the rules to be really like robust and as succinct as they can be, and then this sprawling campaign that you can just read off and go bam 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 and just go through it, or you can really dig into it. But we didn't want you to have to like choose, oh well, I want X, Y, and Z to put that together to actually make something that works. We just want it, donk, put it on the table, let's go, boys and girls.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like with the size, I mean, even just the size of the adventure and the quick start, which by the way is free, like on the website for SoulMuppet, and you can download it off the Kickstarter page, but it's just soulmuppet-store-co-uk, and that link will be where links are on the internet whenever you see this video. But again, it is an 88-page quick start. It is way more than enough to play the game, so I can't imagine if you said that is like a fraction of what the campaign is going to be. You pretty much are just going to need the campaign because you're going to be locked up in that for a while. But you did talk about stretch goals at one point. And I know there are a couple for the project that you've already reached. So what are the stretch goals for the project and the next one that's like coming up as you continue to fund?
Yeah. So the first two we did were both extra NPCs we were going to add to the game. Nick wanted to write a guy called Motley the Crow, and I'm doing a guy called Angmir of Basingad. Am I saying that right, Nick?
Yeah.
Sure.
Absolutely.
And and those have both been funded now. Next up on the list is I'm writing a sort of like how to write your own Doomspiral content bit, just like a couple pages that are like, hey, if you want to add some more stuff onto this or homebrew your own thing or write your own campaign from scratch, here's like a bunch of advice that I can give, because like Nick's obviously written this whole campaign from scratch and it's come very naturally to him, whereas I've had to work to learn how to make Doomspiral, in someone else's image specifically. And it's got a bunch of worked examples from a adventure that I started writing but kind of haven't been able to finish in time for the project, called Curse Rotten Corvast. Maybe we'll like be able to address that in a future stretch goal. But after that one, which is a 40k, so I guess like $55,000, maybe something like that. We'll be doing just a stretch goal pay rise for all of our collaborators, which is like a super important thing for us to do. When the project does well, we want the people who we're working with to share in that success. And then after that, anything's possible. Who knows? Solo rules. Maybe I'll be allowed to finish that adventure that I've written about 10,000 words of. Who knows? Anything's possible. But we've got some more exciting stuff planned for the future.
Yeah. I mean, there is. Damn, I don't know why I felt like this has been going for a while. Maybe this because it's been funded the entire time. There's still 20 days. There's almost 3 weeks left on this campaign. And once again, you guys are already like almost 3 stretch goals in and funded on day one and are what is the percentage when you funded twice?
The 200? Yeah.
200%? Is that how math works? Because my brain just went, that doesn't feel right. Sure, but I guess it would be. I mean, so 200% funded on a project. And again, the second Kickstarter of the year, with Paint the Town Red coming out soon, Mad as Hell still in the works, Doomspiral still in the works. So you're doing your darndest to stay busy, is what it fucking sounds like. So is there beyond?
And you bet there's a big ass project coming in March next year, and then October the year after that, and then March the year after that, on October that same year. I'll be going until I drop dead. Yeah. Or so we'll be making games all the time, and I won't be able to write all of them, but I'm going to do my damnedest.
I will continue to clear shelves out of the way and keep putting stuff in boxes to make room. But so what is there anything on the horizon, new or old, that is coming, something like an afterburn for Orbital Blues again, or anything else, or is it focused more on future projects?
We've done we've had our little time of not doing any Orbital Blues stuff and making new games. It'll have been 3 projects since our last Orbital Blues one. So I think I'm safe to say that in March this year, you can expect Orbital 3s. Will it be as ambitious as Afterburn? No, because that was too much work and took too much time to fulfill. Sam and Josh have already started writing and doing art. But there's something else coming in that period, which is SoulMuppet related and is Orbital Blues related, that I think I might have told you in person, but I am not going to say on this podcast. There's secrets coming. And after that, who knows what will be October next year. All I can say is that I've personally started writing many stanzas of epic poetry to facilitate this gameplay.
I feel like that's like one of the least surprising things I could hear you say is that I've written stanzas of epic poetry. But I'm sure you told me, and I'm sure as soon as this call ends, I'll be like, what was it again? And I'll be like, yes, that's what it was. But as long as you are willing to come and talk about it, anyone that is a SoulMuppet fan can always find SoulMuppet here talking about the projects. Someone in chat just said solo rules hype. So I think people want that. I think
There's so many people asking. Who want solo rules. It's absolutely nuts.
The loneliness epidemic is real. A lot of people
yeah, no, I hear it.
Yeah.
We are working out how to look after you, person, and other people who want solo rules. It's just not something we've planned. We've been making this game for a really long time. And like Nick and I aren't solo rules guys. I don't play solo games. I don't think you do either, Nick, right?
No, the only one I really did get into for a bit was Thousand-Year-Old Vampire, but that's specifically because I was playing it with a friend, or rather, we sent each other letters about our games of Thousand-Year-Old Vampire. So even that wasn't hugely solo.
Yeah. But we have a solo games guy. We will hear shortly from our solo games guy, and then maybe there'll be some solo game content.
That's what I was gonna say. Is just, I mean, you the Wanderer was not y'all. Just find someone who's really excited that is like, I'm working on one, and be like, all right, cool, that looks good. We'll just take that one, and just kind of go from there. But yeah, so that is Doomspiral. That's what's coming up. There's still 20 days left in the campaign, and once again, there's still like a plethora of stuff, both new and old, from SoulMuppet on the website, and we'll make sure that that's all where those links are. But where can people find you guys? Where can people find you, Zach, you, Nick, and SoulMuppet as a whole to grab all of this stuff that I have on my shelf here?
So
I'll let you
the
feel
Soul
that
Muppet
first,
web
Zach.
store and the Doom Spiral quick start and also campaign page are the places to find the games you've been talking about most recently. You can get copies of all the other games that Ryan has on his shelf from our web store, which ships for both from the UK and the US. So we can get you books relatively cheaply wherever you are. I personally am Zach or the Jelly Muppet. You can find me at Jelly Muppet on most platforms. Apart from on Instagram, where I am at Muppet Makes Minis, where you can only find my Warhammer kit bashes and none of my books. What about you, Nick?
A lot of my stuff is on SoulMuppet, as I've said, so that's a good way to do it. Get Doom Spiral. It's pretty good, I hear. But in terms of me specifically, I'm at an expense on Blue Sky. The other kind of thing that I have cooking, it's called a heist game. It's a OSR styled kind of medieval crime game. That's cooking. It's not quite done, but I will shout about it when it is.
Well, make sure you shout at us about it, and maybe we can have a chat about that.
Hell yeah.
But again, Zach, always a pleasure having you on. Nick, it was very nice to meet you.
And you.
I'm a big Gangs of Titan City fan. I do have
Thank you so much.
every cover. So just like with everything else. So it was a pleasure to get a chance to talk with you. We'll make sure that everything that we just said, all the links to these wonderful people and where you can find this stuff is again in the description below because that's how the internet works. But seriously, thank you guys so much for being here, and that is going to be us for today. So we will see you all later. Bye.
Thanks so much for having us on.
Thank you. Ciao, ciao.